So let's start with why this is so strange. Because at first glance, you might think consciousness is just a brain thing. Neurons fire, chemicals move around, and boom, thoughts happen. And yeah, science has gotten incredibly good at explaining the what and the how of the brain. We know which regions light up when you feel fear. We know the exact neurotransmitters involved when you fall in love. We can even predict certain decisions you're about to make before you're consciously aware you've made them. But here's the thing. None of that actually answers the real question. The real question is, why does any of that physical activity feel like anything at all? Think about it this way. Imagine I built you a perfect robot. Same structure as a human brain, every neuron replicated in silicon, every signal perfectly mirrored. That robot would process information. It would react to its environment. It might even say, "I feel happy right now." But would there be something it's like to be that robot? Would there be an inner experience happening? Or would it just be an incredibly sophisticated machine going through the motions in the dark? This is the question philosopher David Chalmers posed in 1995, and it absolutely rocked the scientific and philosophical world. He called it the hard problem of consciousness, specifically to contrast it with the so-called easy problems, which aren't actually easy at all, but are at least theoretically solvable. Things like, how does the brain integrate information? How does it focus attention? How does it control behavior? We can imagine, in principle, building a detailed enough scientific account of all of that. But subjective experience? That inner light of awareness? That's the hard part. And the gap between physical processes and felt experience has a name: the explanatory gap. And right now, that gap is wide open. Here's why it matters. Because if we can't explain why you feel something, we can't explain what consciousness actually is. And that touches everything. AI rights, animal welfare. What happens when you're under anesthesia? What death even means. Whether there could be life elsewhere in the universe that's genuinely aware. These aren't abstract philosophy puzzles. These are live questions that are going to define the next century of science and ethics. Now, scientists and philosophers haven't just shrugged and given up. There are actually some genuinely fascinating theories on the table. Let's walk through the big ones, because each of them gets you partway there and then hits a wall. Theory 1. Global workspace theory. This is probably the most mainstream neuroscientific account. The idea is that consciousness is basically your brain's broadcasting system. Most of the time, information is processed in specialized, local modules. Your visual cortex handles vision. Your auditory cortex handles sound, and so on. But when information gets broadcast into a kind of global workspace and made available to the whole brain, that's when it becomes conscious. It's like the difference between something happening backstage versus it getting projected on a giant screen for the whole audience. This explains a lot. It maps onto real brain regions. It makes testable predictions. But, and here's the catch, it still doesn't explain why broadcasting information globally produces an experience. Why isn't it just more information processing, still in the dark? The explanatory gap is still there. Theory 2. Integrated Information Theory, or IIT. This one comes from neuroscientist Giulio Tononi, and it's genuinely wild. The claim is that consciousness isn't tied to neurons specifically, it's tied to integrated information. Tononi even has a Greek letter for it, phi. The more a system integrates information in a way that's irreducible to its parts, the more conscious it is. And that means, theoretically, a thermostat has a tiny sliver of consciousness, while a human brain has a lot. This theory is fascinating because it's mathematically rigorous and it makes a bold claim. Consciousness is a fundamental feature of certain kinds of information processing systems, not just a biological accident. But critics hit back hard. First, calculating phi for a real brain is computationally almost impossible. Second, and this is the juicy one, Some physicists pointed out that simple logic gate arrays could score very high on phi, even though intuitively they seem like the last things that should be conscious. The math might not be tracking what we think it's tracking. Theory 3. Panpsychism. Yeah, this is the one that makes hard-nosed physicists uncomfortable. Panpsychism is the idea that consciousness, or at least some primitive form of experience, is a basic feature of reality, woven into the fabric of the universe, not just something that emerges from complex brains. Rocks don't have human consciousness, obviously, but maybe at some level, matter itself has the tiniest flicker of inner life. Now, before you dismiss that as mystical nonsense, some of the most serious philosophers of mind, people like Philip Goff at Durham University, have argued this is actually the most logically consistent response to the hard problem. Because if consciousness can't be explained by physical processes, maybe it's not built from physical stuff. Maybe it's there alongside it from the beginning. The obvious problem? This is really, really hard to test. And it raises a new puzzle. If simple things have experience, how do those experiences combine to create a unified human consciousness? That's called the combination problem, and it's a genuine headache. Theory 4. Illusionism. Then there's the most contrarian take of all. Some philosophers, like Daniel Dennett, probably the most famous, argue that the hard problem is actually a trick your brain plays on itself. There is no mysterious inner light. Consciousness isn't actually what it seems from the inside. Your sense of having vivid, rich, ineffable subjective experience is itself a kind of cognitive illusion, a story your brain tells about itself. This is called illusionism, and it's provocative because it essentially says, stop looking for the hard problem solution because the premise is wrong. But most people's gut reaction, including a lot of philosophers, is, wait, how can my experience of pain be an illusion? I literally feel it. Denying that seems more bizarre than the mystery itself. Okay, so the theories are contested, but neuroscience isn't standing still. There are real, concrete discoveries that are narrowing the mystery, even if they haven't solved it. One of the most important is the search for neural correlates of consciousness, or NCCs. These are the specific brain patterns that correspond to conscious experience. And research has identified some genuinely compelling candidates, particularly activity in the thalamocortical system, the deep feedback loops between your thalamus and cortex. When that system goes quiet, under anesthesia, in deep dreamless sleep, in a coma, consciousness goes with it. When it hums back to life, awareness returns. We've also learned a lot from split brain patients, people whose corpus callosum, the bridge between the two brain hemispheres, has been surgically cut. And the results are genuinely eerie. Each hemisphere can operate somewhat independently, each with its own stream of perception and intention. It raises a disturbing question. Are there two consciousnesses in one skull? And if consciousness can split like that, what does that tell us about its unity? Then there's lucid dreaming research, studies on psychedelics, near-death experience reports, and even experiments with people who are vegetative but show signs of hidden awareness on brain scans. Each of these edge cases chips away at our assumptions and forces us to rethink what consciousness even is and where its boundaries lie. Here's the honest truth. Some serious thinkers believe the hard problem may be permanently unsolvable, not because we're not smart enough, but because the tools we use to understand the world are themselves products of consciousness. It might be like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. Philosopher Colin McGinn has called this cognitive closure, the idea that human minds may simply be constitutionally unequipped to solve this particular problem. But that's not where I want to leave you, because there's another possibility. Maybe we're in the middle of a paradigm shift, the kind that's happened before in science. Before Newton, gravity was a mystery. Before Darwin, the diversity of life was inexplicable. Before Einstein, time was assumed to be absolute. Each of those moments looked like a permanent wall until someone came along and found a door. Maybe the door here is realizing that our current scientific framework, one that describes the world purely in terms of objective, third-person physical processes, just needs to expand to include subjective experience as a real, irreducible feature of reality. Not supernatural, not mystical, just a wider science. Some researchers are working seriously on exactly this. Integrated information theory is one attempt. So is quantum theories of consciousness, like the orchestrated objective reduction hypothesis from physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, who controversially suggest quantum processes in microtubules inside neurons might be involved in consciousness. Most mainstream neuroscientists are skeptical. But the fact that a Nobel-adjacent physicist is taking this seriously tells you something. So where does this leave us? You exist at a genuinely extraordinary moment. Consciousness research is exploding. We have better brain imaging than ever. We have AI systems sophisticated enough to make us seriously ask whether they might be conscious. And that question has real stakes, real urgency. The field of consciousness science has gone from a fringe topic to one of the most funded and debated areas in neuroscience and philosophy combined. And the mystery at the center of it, the hard problem, is still sitting there. Open, unresolved, waiting. But here's what I find strangely beautiful about that. Every single thing you experience, every color, every emotion, every moment of quiet self-reflection, is part of a phenomenon so profound that the smartest people who have ever lived haven't been able to fully explain it. Your awareness isn't just a side effect of neurons firing. It might be the most remarkable thing in the known universe. It's the one thing you are absolutely certain exists. René Descartes figured that out 400 years ago. I think, therefore I am. And yet it remains fundamentally, gloriously mysterious. The fact that science can't fully explain why you feel anything isn't a failure. It's an invitation. An invitation to keep asking, to stay curious, to hold on to the wonder of what it means to be a conscious being in a universe that might not have had to produce one. And honestly, that feels like enough, for now. If this got your brain buzzing, if you're now sitting there wondering about your own experience in a way you weren't an hour ago, that's exactly the point. These are the questions worth asking. If you want more deep dives like this, where we take the hardest questions in science and actually sit with their complexity instead of pretending they're simple, hit subscribe. New videos drop every week, and I promise they'll give you the same feeling this one hopefully did. That mix of being slightly unsettled and completely fascinated at the same time. Drop a comment below. Do you think the hard problem will ever be solved? Or is there something about consciousness that will always stay beyond the reach of science? I genuinely want to read what you think. I'll see you in the next one.